Hey everybody, this is usually a video that I would do and I would deck it out, trick it out, um, try to get a little fancy with it. But again, if you've been paying attention to the streams, you know that we won't be in this place for much longer. So transitioning into moving, and I'm not just really into setting everything up and all of that. Remember, we do have the video studio coming up, so I'm going to be getting a lot more just advanced in terms of the type of production that I put out. That's the whole reason why we're moving in the first place. Talked to you guys plenty of times about my aspirations as far as a content creator. I don't want to, get mundane. I don't want to be creating content that's stale. I'm always want to be trying to challenge myself, and that's the whole point. And doing what it is that we're doing and moving in the new place. So I really can't wait for that. Again, this is a video that I would trick out, but we're not doing it. But today we're going to talk about Annihilation Scourge. And if you don't know, this is a book that has been centered around a couple of different characters. This is, if I'm not mistaken, Silver Surfer. He might appear at one more place right after Black. It's a Silver Surfer Black. But this is his first legitimate being part of a major story, considering what happened in Silver Surfer Black. But we have him, Sentry, and some other characters, and they always make for a good team. I always talk about how, aside from the Fantastic Four, which are part of this, they're obviously A-list, but a lot of the characters that Marvel has are they could be B-list, if you will. And there's nothing wrong with that, and that they make great teams in terms of team environments. So Annihilation Scourge is another one of those books that has been pretty solid, right? It's been pretty solid, but it flies under the radar, right? It's kind of like, what was that other one that we covered? And I raved about. It was one of the recent books. It was actually, again, centered around some of the Fantastic Four, more so the Thing. And golly, what was the name of that book? I'll think about it here in a little bit as far as what it was. I did a video on it, but it's one of those books, flies under the radar, that it's not one of the ones that they're promoting a lot about or promoting a lot of in terms of big crossover events or stuff like that. It's just one of those books that's pretty solid. It exists in the main universe, but it just flies under the radar. You have to have went to a comic book shop to get really the inside scoop and know that this is even going to be a thing. But Annihilation Scourge centered around Negative Zone. Not going to go to too much detail, but you have the Cancerverse leaking into the Negative Zone. And obviously in that Cancerverse, you have characters that are sort of screwed up versions of a lot of the characters that you guys are familiar with, and they're they can't die. So what happened is that they're trying to contain this. You have the guys in the Fantastic Four. They're trying to contain this because it'll leak into their own dimension. So what happened was, and this was centered around the story before, where Sentry goes into the Negative Zone trying to sort of rid himself, it seems, of the Void, right? And the Void sort of separated from himself and had entire control of Sentry. So Sentry is controlling everybody within the Cancerverse, and so forth. So you have all of these characters that have popped up. Silver Surfer, he's sort of finding himself. But there was a cool scene that I wanted to highlight in this video, where we got a gauge of the flight powers, or more so speed, in which the characters fly, which is always good. So let's start here, so you guys can see some of the characters that popped up. So Nova, obviously, Richard Rider, is, he pops up because, and a lot of the story is centered around him. Definitely, if you know his, if you're familiar with how he runs the, or his experience more so with the Negative Zone. But he comes back to this dimension, bringing all these characters with him, bringing into the Negative Zone. He's Cloak, Dagger, Captain Marvel, and so forth. And they're coming to help Again, they have to contain it here before it goes off into their own thing. And it's funny because we get this scene after this in which they all start flying. So you have characters like Captain Marvel, Human Torch, all. Let me actually go to there. Actually, if I can, let me. It would be it's one of these. Just let me see if I can. It will be after this. Right here. So, as you can see, or maybe you can't. Let me zoom in because my picture's kind of in the way. So you see right here, Beta Ray Bill, all of these characters are trying to fly, right? And this is, I love when things like this happens because look, when you're dealing with comic book characters, obviously not all of them are the same, even though they may have similar powers. You look at flight, and that could entail a lot of different things. Why people are able to fly, why characters are able to fly, how fast they're able to fly, and more so travel. It differs, right? So what we get here is with guys that like Beta Ray Bill and all these other characters are flying, right? And they're trying to chase Nova, who is trying to lead the guys of the Cancerverse back basically into that universe. And the only one that could catch him is Silver Surfer. And Silver Surfer's like, you see, he's flew past him. He's coming back now. He's flying backwards. So clearly, what you get from this is basically Silver Surfer, among even characters like Captain Marvel and such, is who they, for whatever reason, boost to the oblivion. She's in everything now, and she's supposed to be powerful. But even characters like her, Nova can fly fast. So Nova, if you gauging this, Nova flies faster than all of the characters that you've seen, including Human Torch and such. And Silver Surfer can fly way faster than him, is what you pick up from this, because again, he's flying, he's outpacing them, but Silver Surfer just like zips right past him, goes in front of him. Now he's flying backwards, like, hey man, follow me type stuff. So I thought this was really cool, and I wanted to bring this up because a lot of guys, some of you guys may even have questions about how fast some of these characters are. In terms of their flight, and this is something that I think we'll be going back to maybe years from now when people talk about who is faster. This really is a good gauge. This comic book is really a good gauge because it shows how fast not only Nova can fly, but more so Silver Surfer, and how he is very, 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 very fast in terms of his flight and when he's on his board. So I thought that was really cool, and I wanted to point this out. And also, it gave me an opportunity to talk about Annihilation Scourge. This is Omega. This was the last part of it. I recommend that you guys read it. Again, it's one of those that flew under the Contagion. It took me the entire video to finally think of that other story that I was talking about that flew under the radar. That was really good because it was happening right during Absolute Carnage. So that was a good book. And this is another one, flying under the radar. Annihilation Scourge. I really do. Beta Ray Bill, if you guys are a fan of him, you can see him. Sentry is part of this, is a big part of this, and a lot of other characters like Silver Surfer, Fantastic Four, and so forth. And it does a great job of going back into like the previous, because all of these characters, definitely Nova and Fantastic Four, Human Torch, they've had their experience in the negative zone. So most definitely, you guys should check this out. It's a very, very solid book.